Oh, yeah, good morning, Nat. It's Uncle Lou here. Good morning. Yeah. You know how usually when people do prediction videos, myself included, they'll talk about the game for a while and then they give their prediction at the end. There's no point in doing that in these two games. I mean, I am going to talk about the games, but I'm just going to give the predictions first because it's probably like the worst kept secret in the history of LouTube here on these two games. But Oregon versus Washington, Pac-12 title game Friday night, Las Vegas. Louisville versus Florida State Saturday in Charlotte. We'll start with Oregon and Washington. Oregon will win. I've been high on Oregon before they played Washington. Immediately when the game ended, I was still high on Oregon. And all Oregon has done from that point in the season on is continue to look impressive to me. I have thought Oregon was one of the best four teams in the country for a long, long time. I still feel that way. We'll talk specifically about the game in a minute, but if you've been paying attention to this channel at all over the last couple of months, it's not a surprise to you that I'm picking Oregon to beat Washington in the Pac-12 title game. I'll talk about the game and give some reasons why in a second. Florida State and Louisville, I'm going with Louisville. And does it have anything to do with the Jordan Travis injury? Kinda. I picked Louisville to win this game a month ago, before the Jordan Travis injury. Not because I'm really, really high on Louisville, but because I'm not really, really high on Florida State. Now that Florida State doesn't have Jordan Travis, that's definitely not a reason for me to change my mind. So I'm going to stick with Louisville beating Florida State in the ACC title game. And I think if Florida State does beat Louisville, and there's a chance, I'm less confident in the Louisville-Florida State game than I am the Oregon-Washington game. There is a chance Florida State can win this game. Again, we'll talk about that game in a minute. I'm just doing this backwards. I'm telling you who I think is going to win up front because I haven't made a secret about these things on the channel over the last month. When it comes to the ACC and the Pac-12, Oregon's been my pick for a while, and Florida State losing in the ACC title game has been my pick for a while, so I'll just give you that. I'll just give you that right up front. If Florida State does win the ACC title game at 13-0, they're going to get in the playoffs, no matter how mad that makes people. I think they will probably be the worst 13-0 team to ever make a playoff. There's a couple of other candidates for that. 2014 FSU is one of them. But anyway, we'll talk about the games. Oregon and Washington. They've played already. Washington won. I said as soon as the game was over, if they played again the next day, I'd pick Oregon again. That always makes people mad when you do that. Games do matter. Results on the field do matter. And just because I think Washington would lose to Oregon if they played again, that was never reflected in my rankings, for example. I continued to have Washington ranked ahead of Oregon. I respect what happens on the field above and beyond anything else that myself or anybody thinks, because something you think can't be proven. And it's an opinion. I think this team's better. I think this team will win. When two teams suit up and play and one team wins and one team loses, that's not an opinion. That's not something someone thinks. There's no one on the face of the planet who thinks Oregon beat Washington 6 weeks ago. They didn't. They lost. You look up the box score. Even if you didn't watch the game, it's just a cold, hard fact. So I kept Washington with 0 losses, ranked ahead of Oregon with the 1 loss for the entirety of the season, even though I think Oregon is still the better team than Washington. Texas, Oklahoma was another one where that game ended. Oklahoma beat Texas immediately. I congratulated Oklahoma for the big win, and it was a huge win. Year 2 for Brent Venables to get that win. Now they've gone on to finish, I think, 10-2. Great year for Oklahoma. But as soon as that game was over, I said, look, if these two teams played tomorrow, I'd pick Texas again. I feel like Texas was the better team. It's not discounting what Oklahoma did. I'm not discounting what Washington did in the regular season. But if you look at that, go back and watch that game if you didn't watch it the first time, Oregon and Washington. There's a couple of things that sort of stand out. Now, everybody focuses on sort of the ending of the game and some coaching decisions that Dan Lanning made. And I do think they were bad coaching decisions. As much as I like Oregon and Dan Lanning, he's not a perfect coach. Nobody is. I don't think it's a very big secret. I'm a Georgia fan. I love Kirby Smart. I think he's one of the best coaches in football. You go back and watch him in the first couple of years that he was a head coach. He made some ridiculous in-game decisions. And we see coaches do it all the time. So, I don't think Dan Lanning's sometime a terrible coach, but I do think he sort of blew the ending of that game. I think you got to punt the ball there and play defense. If you don't remember, they were up. They had the ball at the 50-yard line or around the 50-yard line of fourth down, under a minute to go or whatever it was. I punt the ball there, pin Washington inside the 10, 15-yard line, make them go 80, 90, 100 yards for a touchdown to win the game. Oregon goes for it. Dan Lanning decides to go for it. They don't get it. You give Washington the ball with great field position. They go down and win. And everyone has talked about that, up one side, down the other. Literally every opinion you can possibly have about that has been dissected a million times. Earlier in that game, though, Oregon had the ball twice inside Washington's 10-yard line and came away with 0 points both times. Going for it on fourth downs again, not taking field goals, not taking points early in the game. Obviously, it's easy to go back and say when that game ends, man, if we just would have kicked that field goal here or there instead of going for it here or there or punted there. I don't think Lanning will make those mistakes again in this game. And beyond that, I don't think the game will be close enough to where it will matter. I think Oregon is on a roll. Washington, for whatever reason, seems to have peaked at that Oregon game, which came around the halfway point of the season. They have not looked great the last half of the season. They're kind of floating along on how they looked the first half of the season in terms of where they're ranked or how good people think they can be in a playoff type scenario if they were to get in there. They have not looked great over the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season, really going back to the Oregon game. The Oregon game was the last great game they played, I think. And they're capable of playing a great game again. And they're capable of beating Oregon. There are no guarantees in college football, specifically when you get into these conference title scenarios. Generally speaking, you're going to have two pretty good teams facing off in these things, with the exception this year maybe of the Big Ten, right? Well, we got, Michigan and Iowa. So Washington's capable of pulling this thing off. I mean, Michael Penix is an elite-level passer, and if he gets hot, he's hard to slow down. They've got Adunze and really a handful of future NFL Sunday wide receivers on that roster that if they get rolling, they can give Oregon all they want and then some. Oregon's got weapons too. Bo Nix has played great this year. I think he's probably going to finish runner-up for the Heisman behind Jaden Daniels. Their wide receiver, Franklin, has had a monster year. Again, a guy that's going to be playing on Sundays. And defensively, I think I just give the edge to Oregon. I thought Washington would have the best defense in the Pac-12. I was wrong about that. In the offseason, I said multiple times Washington will probably have the best defense in the Pac-12. I just was wrong on that, particularly against the run. It hasn't been great at certain points this season. I think this will be a good game for a while. Oregon is favored by about 9.5, depending on where you look. I don't think Washington can keep it that close. It just seems to me that Oregon is playing much better. Oregon is doing kind of what you need to be doing to make a run in the postseason in today's college football. You need to be playing your best football towards the end of the season. There's a couple of teams you can point to that are playoff contending teams that are clearly playing better now than they were earlier in the season. And that's kind of the trajectory you want to go on as a team in today's college football. And to me, you look at Oregon, it's been kind of a steady rise with a slight hiccup, the Washington game, throughout the season. Whereas Washington started out sky high. How many of y'all remember the first 5, 6 weeks of the season? A lot of people, myself included, were talking about, man, Washington looks like they might be the best team in the country. Definitely the most dominant team. Them or Michigan through the first 5 or 6 weeks. That conversation was had a million times by a million people in a million different places on the internet the first 4, 5, 6 weeks of the season. Since then, it's just been trending the wrong direction for me when it comes to Washington. I'm going to take Oregon to win the Pac-12 title. I think they cover the 9.5. I think they probably win by a couple of touchdowns. And I think at 12-1. Now, obviously, any playoff prediction is going to depend on what happens in every other conference championship game. But I'm fairly certain a 12-1 Oregon with a Pac-12 championship is going to be getting into the college football playoff. Now let's jump over to the ACC with Florida State and Louisville. I've been accused of a lot of things in my time here on YouTube. This thing lately where I'm just a Florida State hater, I can't wrap my head around it. I don't know how many times I have talked about my love for college football and how it developed at a young age, really because of my grandfather. My dad was an NFL guy, not really a college football guy. So when I was a kid, it wasn't like I sat around on Saturdays with my dad watching college football. We would watch the Falcons on Sundays when I was a kid. But my grandfather was probably still to this day the biggest college football fan I've ever known. And he thought Bobby Bowden walked on water. He talked about Bobby Bowden the way religious people talk about Jesus Christ. I mean, it was just, he could do no wrong. He used to get in his car on Fridays and drive down to Thomasville, Georgia, which is just below Valdosta, Georgia, near the Florida line, north of Tallahassee. Bobby Bowden used to take Florida State, when Florida State had a home game, Bobby Bowden used to take the team out of Tallahassee, and they'd stay in this hotel in Thomasville, Georgia. I think it was a Holiday Inn. You got to remember, this was a long time ago, way before the teams have the money they have now, probably staying in the Four Seasons. But Bobby Bowden would get his team out of Tallahassee to kind of get them away from the distractions. Sorry, message on my phone. Get away from the distractions, and he would drive them into Thomasville, Georgia, and they stay at Holiday Inn. My granddaddy used to get in the car Friday mornings and drive down to Thomasville, Georgia, and sit in the lobby of the Holiday Inn there, just waiting on Bobby Bowden to go into or out of the elevator so he could say he saw Bobby Bowden. And I can't tell you how many hours I spent at my granddaddy's house when I was younger on Saturdays watching college football. And while Florida State was never my favorite team, I developed a love for college football through my grandfather's love for college football. He was a big Florida State fan. And Florida State was a dominant program at that time. There's not a day that has gone by in my entire life that I have ever hated Florida State for any reason, period. I just don't think they're a great team. That's literally it. It's not because I'm a Georgia fan. Why would any Georgia fan have random hate for Florida State? I don't think we've played y'all in 20 years, and we beat you. There's just no reason why. No one hates Florida State, really. Not anymore. Maybe back in the day when they were good and great and dominant for a long time. But this idea that if somebody doesn't think Florida State's a elite level top 5 team and they're just a hater, first of all, that whole premise that if you don't agree, if you don't like my team, you're just a hater or whatever, if you don't think my team's going 100, no, you're just a hater, it's so basic and simple and fucking retarded, honestly. Believe it or not, there are people that don't share your opinion, and it's not just because they hate whatever that subject is. I know that's hard for some of you to wrap your minds around, okay? So no, I don't hate Florida State. I just don't think they're an elite level team. I didn't think they were an elite level top 4 or 5 team with Jordan Travis. I definitely don't think they're an elite top 4 or 5 team without him. With that being said, if they beat Louisville, they 100% deserve to be in the playoffs at 13-0. The only way a 13-0 Power 5 conference champion should ever be left out of the playoffs is if there are 5 13-0 Power 5 conference champions, and so one has to be let out. I can't foresee any circumstance, no matter what happens in the other games, where Florida State beats Louisville but does not get in. They're getting in. They're getting in if they beat Louisville. Now, I don't think they're going to beat Louisville. I could be wrong. I told you I'm way more confident on Oregon over Washington than I am Florida State over Louisville. But I've watched a lot of Florida State this year. Believe it or not, I watched a lot of Florida. I watch a lot of Florida State every year. I watch a lot of football, and I watch a lot of Florida State. I'm not some kind of Florida State hater. You guys jumped all over me when y'all hired Willie Taggart too, because I didn't like the Willie Taggart hire, and you told me the same thing. I was just a hater of Florida State. Whatever. Whatever. I've had Florida State in my top 5 in the preseason, and y'all loved me then. Anyway, it is what it is. Here's my issue with this game. I don't think Florida State's a great team. They haven't been a great team with Jordan Travis. I don't think they're a great team without him. Trey Benson can get him a long way running the ball. He was great last week against Florida. I think he had 3 touchdowns last week against Florida. That's the strength of Louisville's defense, is their run defense. So he's going to have another big game. And I don't think Louisville is going to let Trey Benson beat him. I think Louisville is going to force Tate Roadrunner to beat him if Florida State's going to win the game. And I'm just not confident he can do it. I love Keon Coleman. I think he might be one of the best 4 or 5 receivers in all of college football. Now, he disappears at times, and he best not disappear this weekend. But when he's on his A game, when he decides to show up and show out, he's almost uncoverable at times. But there has been large portions of this season where I've looked around and went, does Keon Coleman even still play college football anymore? And yeah, I know he was hurt for a little bit in that, but I'm talking there was games he played in where he was just a complete non-factor. That can't be the case here. It just can't be the case here. I think Louisville wins the game. I don't think Louisville's a great team either. The ACC is bad, people. You can point to that, whatever the ACC record versus the SEC was or whatever, you can point to that. Maybe that makes you feel better. I hope that it does. But top to bottom, the ACC is a garbage can this season. Georgia Tech's the 3rd or 4th best team you guys have to offer. Clemson fell off the face of the earth. Miami wallows around in its own self-pity year after year after year. North Carolina, who was supposed to have a really good year, didn't. Duke started off hot, finished 7-8 wins, 7-5, 8-4, whatever it was. Boston College, Pitt, Syracuse, Virginia. You know, how many Group of 5 losses do these teams have combined between them? 10? The ACC is terrible. Now, Louisville and Florida State are the best of the ACC. What if Louisville wins? And I think they are. Does anybody think they have a shot at getting in the playoffs? I don't. I can't foresee enough train wrecks this weekend to get Louisville into the college football playoff. I just don't see it. But I picked Louisville in this game a couple of weeks ago before Jordan Travis was hurt. I'm going to stay with that prediction. I think this will be a close game. I don't think Florida State's going to be able to run the ball on Louisville. I think they're going to it's going to force Tate Roadrunner to try to beat them, and I just don't think he can do it. I just don't. I've heard what the Florida State fans have had to say, which is for about a year now, really going back to around this time last year, Florida State fans have been telling me that Jordan Travis is the best quarterback in football, and he's winning the Heisman this year. That's what I heard for a year. I think he had an okay year. I don't think it was great. I don't think he was Heisman caliber or even close. But nevertheless, y'all disagreed. Yes, he is. He's great. Heisman, blah, blah, blah. The guy gets hurt, and literally 30 seconds later, you people are on the internet and in my Twitter mentions and in my comment section on YouTube telling me Tate Roadrunner is better than Jordan Travis. I don't buy it. I don't believe it. Even if his ceiling is higher, even if his potential is higher, even if his physical tools are better or whatever, he doesn't have the experience that Jordan Travis has. He doesn't have the leadership that Jordan Travis has. He's not able to give Florida State what Jordan Travis gave Florida State, and I don't think he's able to give Florida State what they need to win this game. I could be wrong. Confidence levels on these two games, Oregon over Washington, I'm at like an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10. I am extremely confident that Oregon will not only beat Washington, but beat them handily. Florida State over Louisville, or Louisville over Florida State. Florida State's only favored by 1.5. So or 2.5, between 1.5 and 2.5, depending on where you look. But so even if Louisville beats them, which is my prediction, it's not exactly a huge upset. It's pretty close to a 50-50 game here. I am going to take Louisville to win. Confidence level on that, I put it more around a 6, so barely over 50%, barely over a coin flip situation. But I have been, I did pick Florida State to lose, going back a few weeks now, so I'm just not going to change. I'm just not going to change it now. So Pac-12 championship game Friday night, ACC championship game will be Saturday, as will the other 3. I'll have videos coming out on those games as well. The SEC championship between Georgia and Bama, the Big Ten championship between Michigan and Iowa, and what's left? What are we leaving out? Big 12, Texas and Oklahoma State. Have a great day.